Boys, we have one mission throughout this Rugby World Cup, and that's to be the #1 team in fantasy rugby. I'll be playing through the official Rugby World Cup app, but if you are playing on another platform, this video should be just as helpful. Now, I've had a pretty decent track record in fantasy rugby over the last decade or so, including finishing in the top 1% in the Fantasy Six Nations and Super Rugby Fantasy when that was a thing. Just so you think I'm not some idiot just dribbling off the top of my head. There's definitely some things I'd say, if you know early on, you'll get the edge over all those people finding their feet in the first few rounds. Also, if you're sitting on the fence about playing fantasy rugby, just download the app and give yourself a chance at some of the prizes or bragging rights in the comment section. And here's a league code to compete against myself and all the others who watch this channel. Okay, time to focus. Let's quickly go over strategies before the games this weekend. Now, there's nothing in the terms and conditions that I could find about players going up and down in price, but with pretty much every fantasy app I've ever seen, players will go up and down based on their performance. These are what I like to call cash cows. You want a few of these early on to build your bank for later in the tournament. And let's face it, if prices aren't changing, well, you'll need a few cheap guys anyways, so it's not really a big issue. Obviously, you'll be wanting to look for good matchups each round, but there's some guys that are just matchup proof, if you know what I mean. These guys I like to call the must-haves, and it doesn't really matter who they play, they'll usually score pretty high. Now, I've seen this in previous fantasy competitions with Nani Lamapi, Ardi Savea, Andre Esterhuizen, Anton Dupont. These guys are really important for building that base score every week, and they're really important if you want to end up #1 overall by the end of the competition. So we have the cash cows, must-haves, and then the players that have a good matchup and should have a field day out. And lastly, the key positions. Back three and hookers, boys. That, I'm guarantee you, they are the positions that will score the most points. A constant trap I see people falling for is picking the fly half from a really good team, or maybe a star player. They really don't go bananas. Which means there's also positions we like to budget on. So that's going to be your props and second rows, even the back row at times. Also, something else I need to mention, there's a rolling lockout, so you've got to do some eyes up fantasy rugby. Look at the team list as they're being announced and adjust your team accordingly. And on that point, if there's two players you're not sure about, one's playing at the start of the round and the other at the end, I usually always would go for the one at the start of the round that's named in the lineups. There's nothing worse than having half your team locked out, needing to make a bunch of changes and just not having that flexibility. Anyways, that was a lot of information to soak in. Probably the biggest G-up and most important thing you need to know though is Uruguay, Tonga, Portugal, Samoa, all on the bye. Those players will not score you a single point this week, so get them out of your team right now. Alright, time for the fun stuff. Let's look at picking a team for this weekend. Now, starting with the outside backs, there's a few guys I'm really eyeing off. Firstly, James Lowe. Trade him into your team. He's going to go off. He's going to go berserk against Romania. Secondly, this one's a bit of a choice that I would go with either Ange Capuzzo or Monty Ioane. I don't really think you should double down and put all your eggs in one basket and pick both, but definitely pick one and just hope they play that side of the field. Same with Marika Corambetti and Mark Nwangani Tawazi. The Wallabies use their wingers really well compared to most other teams. They should get lots of attacking stats, especially if the Wallabies go on to win this game. I think it's a safe bet backing either one of those two. And this team's not announced yet, but keep an eye on the Japanese wingers lining up against Chile. Especially when you look at Joe Nakabula, Lamano Lameki, Semesi Masarewa, or Siosaya Fafita. These guys have some of the highest tackle-busting, line-breaking stats in international rugby. Whoever gets named, they're cheap and they're bound to be attacking stat monsters this weekend. With the matchup against Chile, it's an absolute no-brainer for me. Just having a look here now, the really popular picks for this weekend, Will Jordans, Buffelli, Ramos. I'd be staying clear of these guys personally. While they're all freaks on the field, it's just a bit risky for me. Ramos was a beast in Fantasy Six Nations earlier in the year, but the scoring was more for kicks in play, which I can't see in this tournament. Will Jordan's a freak, probably matchup proof to be honest with you, but why take the risk against the French when you can go with someone half the price and has a chance of scoring a hat-trick? Okay, now we'll have a look at the centers. This is a position that's really hit and miss in fantasy. Just a warning to you. Don't go all out in your center pairing because a lot of times you will be let down. I'm going for a combination of one budget center and one that could rack up the attacking stats this weekend, just based on matchups. Looking at budget, it's hard to go past the Japan centers, Dylan Riley or Nakamura. Both should do a job against Chile. Just check their names. Truthfully, I don't really know enough about the Italian centers. Don't really like their price at 6.5 credits each, staying clear of those guys. Ireland's Bundy Arki and Gary Ringrose. Both should go berserk this weekend against Romania. Just something to keep in mind though is Robbie Henshaw is on the bench, so just think if you're going to go with Ringrose, he's probably only going to play 50 minutes or so. You really want someone who's going to play the full 80 and give you every chance to go big. Although not blowout games, you could probably pick Karevi, Radrada, or Naisalevu, and they'll do a job for you. They'll go big. Their teams are so dependent on their attacking stats that it doesn't really matter who they're versing, but if you do bring them in for the blowout games later on in the pool stages, they'll go massive. Their ceilings are very, very high. At fly half, do not pick Johnny Sexton, I reckon. He's only going to play 45, 50 minutes at the most. Currently, Paolo Garbisi from Italy is the favourite with the good draw against Namibia. He should have a solid game, a goal-kicking 10 with a nice draw. Bit of a no-brainer, but something important to note with Garbisi is he's not really a try scorer or a line break machine himself. So you'll really need him to get lots of kicks at goals and lots of line break and try assists. I'm not really tempted at all by Libok, Maunga, Russell, Halibert. Just tight contests, while Maunga and Russell can definitely go huge on their day. More of a wait and see after tougher games this week. Carter Gordon's a good shout, I don't mind him. A real attacking number 10. You could also take a gamble on Damien Valemsa because he will be playing at fullback and they tend to get a bit more attacking stats than fly halves. Same with Bowden Barrett, but again, it's just the draw. Don't really like the look of others. Garbisi, Gordon, and then if you have the cash, you can go Maunga or Russell, but I can't see them scoring more than the other two. Looking at scrum halves, it's a position that really traditionally doesn't offer up too much points unless there's TJ Perenara in his rookie year. Anton DuPont, though, is a proven beast. Must have every week or he will sting you. He'll probably outscore every other halfback every week throughout the competition. Even in tough games against the All Blacks, he creates pretty much all their attacking opportunities, so you don't want to be one of the only people death riding him the entire game. You'll have to fork out top dollar to get DuPont. That's the only downside, but there's some other options if you can't make it work. Maybe Tate McDermott at a stretch or Gareth Davies from Wales. A little bit stumped with scrum half, so let me know down in the comments if there's anyone that I might be overlooking here. Now, onto the back row, that gets a little bit interesting. Before the team lineups were announced, I had Artie Surveyor, Josh Van der Fleer 100% locked in. Then I was weighing up between Juan Martin Gonzalez and Kazuki Himeno, both attacking monsters, and that's what's really going to get us points this year. But thankfully, Van der Fleer being named on the bench made the decision for me. He's out, and I'm going with Artie, Juan Martin Gonzalez, and Kazuki Himeno. And to be honest, guys, the back row really is like the centers. There'll be up and down weeks for every player. Just pick wide running back rowers that you think could get a line break or a line break assist throughout the game. You could go for players really good on the pilfer, but they're just as likely to get penalised, I've found. Now, looking on the second rows, guys, seriously, go as cheap as you can in this position. There's no reason to put the mortgage on this one at all. They're insanely overpriced, and they'll let you down with their scores. Don't get sucked into it. Some guys I like the look of, bang for buck wise, Jack Cornelson from Japan. Jump on Tuisu from Fiji. Playing number 6, should get a bit of space out wide, and I figure Fijian players are good for attacking stats all the time, so just jump on him. Will Allen's from Wales, he's in some good form. And just if you see anyone on there that you know will usually play 80 minutes, just go for them. I'd love to bring in Ireland second rowers, but geez, they're expensive and the upside's not even guaranteed for a second rower, so just cheap out. Hookers, boys, this is where you want to spend big. Look for those countries that love scoring tries off mauls: Ireland, South Africa, Argentina. When I look at the hookers from those 3 countries for this weekend, Malcolm Marx is great, but realistically, how many more tries did they get over Scotland? Same with Julian Montoya against England. He is great for scoring more tries, but it's a tough contest, you know. Then there's Herring for Ireland, who's guaranteed to get at least 1, maybe 2 this weekend, which has made it a pretty straightforward decision for me. I definitely recommend picking your props last, just for the sheer fact that they don't always score many stats. There's a few boys I really like the look of. Angus Bell and Thomas Gallo, 4.5 credits, both love running the footy. Ellis Genge is also excellent for attacking stats. The only issue with him is he's quite a bit more expensive than the others. A lot of love for Tyg Furlong and Andrew Porter. I just think, yes, Ireland have a great running game, but if a prop is one of your 3 Irish players, I think your team's set up really wrong. Outside backs, centres or hookers have to be from Ireland this weekend. And if you want to go really cheap, Craig Miller from Japan, if he's named, he's a good shout. Yeah, just have a look. Any team you think might dominate at scrum time against a weaker opposition, find the cheapest guy, chuck him in. Now, this is how my team's looking so far. Subject to change for this weekend. I don't like putting all my eggs in one basket, like I said. So instead of going 2 wingers or 2 centers from the one country, I prefer to mix it out, spread the love, and just hope I've picked the right guys from each team. Looking over my captaincy plans for this weekend, I'll be chucking it on James Lowe. Only other option I can see here is Rob Herring. Ireland love running rugby, should really rack up the attacking stats and get plenty of opportunities. Please, please, please just don't be peanuts and go chucking your captaincy on a fly half or a back rower. Just listen to me. The outside backs usually score the most points in fantasy. Now, I've also used one of these sneaky boosters, and that's the defensive masterclass or defensive boost. Oh, let me have a look at its actual name. I've used the defensive king for this weekend, and I've chucked it on Artie Surveyor. I think he'll just be a weapon at tackling against the French. He'll want to win that game so badly, and he's an absolute workhorse. Anyways, that just about sums up all the tips I have for you. This is how I've shaped my team. Hopefully you got something out of this. Jump down in the comment section if you have any suggestions or tweaks you'd make. Yeah, jump in the league. Thanks for watching.